All right, so officially welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining. Uh, Today's topic is very much about one specific piece of software, Microsoft Teams, obviously. But honestly, as I was talking to Liz, our presenter, earlier before this presentation started, that it's not really just one software. It's not just one easy thing. It's more of a platform, right? There's so much you can do in Microsoft Teams. And when you get more and more comfortable, you realize, oh my God, the opportunities are endless. It's a complete ecosystem. It is truly a platform. So I'm very much looking forward to what Liz is going to be talking about, specifically, real case studies of things that have happened with the state of Minnesota, for example, college systems and others, of and then Rochester Community College, where I believe you teach, right, on for
Yes,
many years now. Yeah.
yes.
So really, very much looking forward to it, to see exactly what the use cases were, how they were accomplished, the pros and cons, good and the not do's. I think both sides of the story is very important to understand, right? Not just what to do, but also what not to do and what to stay away from, because those things don't work. And Liz, I've known Liz for a very long time. She's right now at Microsoft, uh, but before at Microsoft, before a couple of years ago, she was a fellow MVP in the
Yeah.
Microsoft space. So I was just telling her that she's still part of the community. We love her.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Let me show you guys one more thing before I hand it over to Liz. Within Microsoft Teams, you obviously have, like I said, there's an ecosystem. You can do so much with the Microsoft Teams. We, as a company, VisualSP, actually have deployed an app for Microsoft Teams as well. Microsoft Teams as well. It's called the VisualSP app for Microsoft Teams. And I'm actually showing the screen right now on my screen here that this is where you can download the app. When you download the app, you get all of Microsoft Learning Pathways content, which if you're not familiar with Microsoft Learning Pathways, it's tons and tons, over 600 pieces of videos and articles and everything else coming from Microsoft regarding all Microsoft applications such as Teams and Planner and OneDrive and Yammer and SharePoint and so much more. Everything, all the content comes directly within Microsoft Teams. And this is what it looks like. There's a VisualSP, basically a VisualSP app that appears in the left rail of Teams. And I have that going here, so I can just quickly show it to you, what it looks like. Here we go. This is Microsoft. This is my own Microsoft Teams over here, as you can see on the screen. And by clicking on VisualSP right here, I was able to get to this thing, which in the beginning, it shows me Teams specific content. For example, favorite and follow channels. How do you do that as a user? You click on it, it shows you a quick video of how to do that. And then there's some additional content below that as well that you can go to. Right? It's just it's a super quick way to add this app. Once you add this app, it just works just like that. There's nothing else to it. And then your users can also go from here, look at other applications, such as, for example, I want to know more about Excel. So you go to Excel. And then in here, adding a chart title, adding secondary access, all this content is coming from Microsoft Learning Pathways. And this app is free, by the way. It's just like Learning Pathways, content is free. And then we have a premium version of the application as well, where you can manage the content and make your own, things like that. But this version of it, what you're looking at, is completely free. There's no cost to that. You can go to App Store, search for VisualSP. That's one way. Or second way, as I was showing here, you can go to the site, go to visualsp.com, products, and VisualSP for Microsoft Teams. You can get it from there. And I'll put a link to that in the questions and answer panel and in chat as well here. If this helps, take advantage of it. Let us know what you think. That's all we ask. All right, so that's it. I'm going to turn it over, change the presenter here to Liz. Okay, Liz, all yours.
I think I'm gonna have to maybe download that and show that to some of my customers. That's amazing.
Awesome.
Love
Good
that.
to hear.
Are you seeing my screen again?
Yep, I
Awesome.
am.
All right. Awesome. So, yeah, today's session, we're going to be talking about using Microsoft Teams for really adult learning. And adult learning can take place in a variety of different ways. I happen to be working at a college that does a lot of extension learning. So it's, really adult education. It's part of the college, meaning they get college credits, but it's not part of any type of like degree program or master's degree or anything of those types of things. It's more just, ongoing education that we're all looking for. I happen to be looking for, the remote type of ways of being able to do some ongoing education constantly, at least for right now, just to keep my mind up and running. So this was really a use case that I worked on last year, and just wanted to kind of present some of those results for you. So just a quick little introduction of myself here and who I am. My name is Liz Sundet. As Asif gave me such a kind introduction already, I do happen to be working for Microsoft right now. I've worked for Microsoft for almost 2 years now as a field engineer, and love my job at Microsoft. Everything that anybody tells you about Microsoft, how wonderful it is, how great everything is, it was beyond my wildest dreams as to how awesome it is. But besides my job at Microsoft, I happen to be an adjunct instructor, adjunct professor for the Rochester Community and Technical College. And we like to refer to that as RCTC for those people that go there. And I've been teaching things like project management, things like business analysis, agile, scrum, all of those types of topics. So nothing to do with the technology that I do every single day, but have this huge background in project management and business analysis. And a lot of my students happen to be from Mayo Clinic or some of the surrounding businesses, and are interested in doing business analysis or project management and learning a little bit more on that. So I've gotten wonderful, wonderful opportunities, as Asif mentioned, being part of the community and just really giving back holistically to that community, and being able to teach other people or talk to other people about what they're doing in their workplace, and learn and grow from their ideas. So one of the things that I like to do and can't do it right now is travel. The picture with me of the organ in the background, that was taken in Haarlem, Netherlands, which is just outside of Amsterdam. I've done the conference there for the last 3 years. Wonderful, wonderful location. I happen to be a music major for my undergrad degree. So I really approach technology from a holistic sense, and that I think has a lot to do with my music background. I
I didn't
can
know that.
see some of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have a music undergraduate degree in percussion performance of all things. So very, very
Explains your
interesting
Twitter
stuff.
handle now.
Yes, that explains my Twitter handle. Yes, you kind of got to know who I am and all, what I'm about. Yeah. And so my Twitter handle is percussion, because that's my instruments. So do a lot of work with women in SharePoint, as one of the attendees that's uh, on the conference today, or on the webinar today, knows I started a group of women in SharePoint. We had a lot of fun going out to lunch after some of our user group meetings, and just getting to know each other. And so met so many wonderful, wonderful women in that regard. So I do hail from Minnesota. We have a beautiful day here in Minnesota. It's nice and bright and shiny, and it's actually a little warm. So I think the summer is maybe upon us, hopefully. But I've also seen it snow in early June before too. So at any rate, we're going to be talking about a case study today, and this is a case study that it really is from the Rochester Community and Technical College. I teach a project management class there. And so this case study is around that project management class, as well as using, as we know from the title of the webinar today, using Teams to really enhance some of that learning. And how do we use that technology to make our learning a little bit better and to solve some problems, maybe even. So the agenda that we're going to be covering today, I'd like to just start with a background where RCTC has been in terms of their particular classroom offering, some problems that we faced when we decided to do things just a little bit different. We'll talk about the experiment, and that's really kind of where the case comes into play, as well as those results from the experiment. And then, as we know, we're always innovating. So, what are some things that we can do in the future to help improve or make things a little bit different? And then I've got an inspiring video that I don't think the audio will actually work. So I'm just going to talk through where you can find that video, and you can play it for yourself and get inspired a little bit as well. I know Asif is going to be posting the slide deck, so the video should work within the slide deck as well, for anybody that's interested after the webinar is over.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk a little bit of the background. So RCTC has been offering a course for project managers who are interested in becoming PMP certified. Now, PMP certification is offered by the Project Management Institute, and it has been a really big institution for all of the project managers since about 1974. So if you are PMP certified, it means that you've gone through not only a rigorous set of years of experience, but you've gone through some type of education. You've taken a 4-hour, 200-question test, which is extremely stressful, in about 10 different subject areas that are all related to project management. So this course was really designed not to teach project managers how to be really good project managers. The course is really designed on how to pass the PMP course, or how to pass the PMP test, to have that PMP certification behind your name, all of those types of things. So this was a traditional classroom course. So people would come, they would sit in a classroom with other students, other adult learners for, something of the matter of like 10 to 12 weeks. They'd get college course credits or ongoing education credits, all of that type of stuff. That's been in place since 2007. So think of, your traditional classroom, everything is done in the classroom. You take a regular attendance, you have regular tests that they do, they have lectures, all of those kinds of things in a traditional classroom. In 2015, Rochester Community and Technical College was offered a grant to be able to work in conjunction with Mayo Clinic and develop some online self-paced course materials. And so I was one of those instructors that happened to be, on staff and working, with some of the traditional classroom types of things since about 2001. I'm sorry, since about 2010. And so, a few years into that traditional classroom course, I became involved and started writing some different modules for the online course, as well as doing some teaching of, just kind of substituting in for instructors, that type of thing when I needed to, and started writing some of those course materials, and basically came up with a whole online self-paced course that people could go in and take. And so if you didn't have time for the in-person kind of course, you could do this online self-paced course. And great, awesome type of opportunities for those people that, really couldn't spend the time going through the traditional classroom types of things, and just worked with it that way. Then in about 2018, I would say about September 2018, we decided that we were going to try and do things maybe a little bit differently. And we wanted to try something called either reverse classroom or like a hybrid or mixed mode type of classroom, where we would combine some of the online modules that would be available in that self-paced prep course, They would take those modules over a series of weeks, but then we'd also have kind of the in-person, in-classroom activities that would reinforce some of those main concepts that they were learning in those self-paced type of course. So we kind of re-envisioned this and started working with it. And how do we do this? Make the class room activities a little bit less intense because a lot of the stuff was covered in the online modules, but to reinforce really some of those really important topics, things like how do you gather requirements, or how do you communicate, and what are all those different communications channels with different people. So that's really kind of what we did in the what we call spring, which started in about February of 2019 and went until the middle of May in 2019. It was about a 12-week, 13-week course if you include the spring break week in there. And we used the online modules as well as those classroom activities, which I'll show you in just a bit. The majority of those students are employed by Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic has a huge representation. They run about around 1,000 to 1,100 projects in any given year. So a lot of project managers, a lot of business analysts. They require training, and they partner with Rochester Community and Technical College for that type of adult learning ongoing types of training. So the hybrid course idea, again, it was, online course materials were done over those 12 weeks. We basically had an assignment of different modules that we would discuss each week, and then they would come to class on like a Tuesday evening or Wednesday evening, after the work day is over, and we would do classroom activities. Some of these used, videos, some of these used innovation games. And these are actual pictures of the students. We had an assignment to do an innovation game called Build a Bridge, where they had newspaper and tape, and they had to meet requirements to be able to build this bridge out of those two construction materials. And they had to work together, be very collaborative, do some planning, do some execution, all within only about 45-minute time boxed period. So they got to kind of experience how a project would work in a really accelerated fashion. And then we would reinforce things like questions to prep for the exam. And it was really kind of a collaborative learning environment, as well as having that online course material. Okay, so one of the first problems that we ran into was we've got these wonderful decks that we would use for the in-person types of activities, to set up the activity, and also a lot of different questions that we would have, throughout the course materials, that were different than the questions that were in the online modules, just to give them exposure to as many questions as you possibly can. And that's really how one prepares for taking the PMP test. So the problems that we came up with was, how do we share the presentation deck materials with the adult students? We've got this wonderful LMS system that was really designed for the online portion, but to put those additional decks into the LMS, it didn't really fit our needs. It didn't really make sense to be there. Plus, it was one of those things where, well, now the people that are just taking the self-paced online, would they have access to those deck materials and all of those other things, that type of stuff? So we started brainstorming, and we said, okay, so what do we use? We could fill up your email inboxes, and we asked the students this. Do you want us to send them out by email and fill up your email inboxes? And they were like, yeah, no. And I said, well, how about SharePoint? Unbelievably, I got so many groans about using SharePoint, and it was like a stab to my heart. Um, and of course, the students, this is the first night, so they don't know that I have a background in SharePoint. But I said, well, we've got a SharePoint site that we can load all these up into, and they're like, oh. And it was like, what's wrong with SharePoint? We can never find anything,
Yep.
or we can't log in, or, one excuse after the other. And I was like, wow, these Mayo Clinic people, they're not in tune with the technology stuff at all here. Dropbox or Box was mentioned, all of those types of things. Then I mentioned, well, why don't we use Microsoft Teams? And it was incredible, that it kind of piqued some interest. But what I found out was that most students had zero knowledge of Microsoft Teams, like no knowledge, like didn't even know it was a thing. So that presented another problem, is that, now, okay, do we have to kind of teach the technology, um, as kind of, a tool, or, a way of getting to those deck materials to solve that problem, um, in a class that really was technology agnostic. I didn't want to like spend every class going through how to do something new in Teams, for instance. That wasn't the point of the class. And project managers are supposed to be very technology agnostic. There's a lot of great products, such as, I mean, even if you think of just the Microsoft ones, Microsoft Project or Planner, or, thousands of other third parties that integrate with different applications, that can be used with Microsoft products. But, this wasn't about teaching them technology. It wasn't about teaching them like how to be good project managers. It was passing the PMP exam. There's not a recommended technology, that the PMP exam, has as, their kind of promotion of that. They are very technology agnostic. So that was kind of our problems that persisted throughout. So while we chose to move forward with Microsoft Teams, it was really one of those areas that I had to kind of go, okay, we're going to have to do an experiment of some sort. And what is that experiment? You know, uh, feel bad kind of calling it an experiment, but there was some really key things that I wanted to make sure that everybody was able to do. Number one, get to those slide decks. And then, number two, be able to maybe ask each other questions, or, kind of collaborate with each other while they're not in that classroom. So if they had a question on maybe a module, that they could contact the teacher, and not have to email back and forth or any of those types of things. And then other people might have kind of those same questions. So, they might want to follow that thread a little bit closer, follow that line of communications a little bit closer. And how do you be very transparent working in an environment that, you don't see each other every single day? So really what we chose to do is, just do this experiment. And I actually told the class, I said, look, we're going to use Microsoft Teams, give it a try. If it absolutely does not work, I am open to using something else that, anybody suggested, but I want us to just try using it and we'll see how we like it. Okay. So that was kind of the agreement that I made with them in terms of the experiment. Um, I take very much a KISS methodology. And so anybody that hasn't heard the KISS acronym, keep it simple, Sally, is how I like to talk about the KISS method. There are other names for it,
I
but
was
we're
going to
just
say,
not going in
yeah.
there. Or keep it simple, Stanley. We can use that one too. But,
Sure.
really, let's talk about the KISS method. The simpler, the better, right? And what I love about Microsoft Teams is that it is so malleable, it is so adaptable. And Asif and I know we were talking about this, before the webinar today, is that, you can analyze what your business need is and what your use case is, and then set it up to only really take advantage of meeting that business need or that business use case, right? And don't worry about, that people are using everything under the sun, every application or every possibility, every feature. Those features are great and they have a time and a place. But for this, I set up really, really simple version of Microsoft Teams. And I'm going to show you a few screenshots here in just a minute. I sent them an email invite and we had about a 20 to 30 minute training session. It was really, I sent them an invite during the class and, so they got their invite and I showed them, walked them through how to accept that invite, how to sign into Microsoft Teams, and then just showed them the navigation of what Microsoft Teams would look like. All right, so very, very simple setup. I actually only set up or left just the general channel. I didn't set up additional channels at all, left everything under the general channel. And you'll even see in this, I didn't have any additional apps. We just had posts and files. Really simple setup, really applied the KISS method here. And again, did that for a reason. And, I could have broken it out into lots of different ways. I could have broken it out into modules. I could have broken it out into different questions, had channels for just about everything. But the simpler, the better. And again, we were just doing an experiment here and we could add on as we needed or as our requirements changed. All right, so
Mhm.
this actually worked really, really well for us. So any questions around that at all as to why we chose that really simple method? I mean, again, keep in mind, all of our users were, they weren't experienced in Teams at all. I think if I had maybe a different audience that was really experienced in Teams, I would have maybe set it up a little bit different, but they had never even heard of Teams before, so set it up that way.
Yeah, I'll throw something in there as to the
Yeah.
questions and also the confusion that I've seen happen, and I've seen it actually done in front of me, even by my own team members, is creating new teams, right? Like creating a new team just to talk about one specific subject, or making new channels, even though we already were talking about marketing or something else here. Why do you have to make a new channel? Or,
Yeah.
doing everything in chat instead of channels.
Yeah.
Uh, and then also within channels, not understanding how you can make a new thread within a
Oh,
channel
yes.
instead of just, right? That's a big thing. But there's so many things like that where it almost seems like you're learning from scratch a new system. So it is
Yeah.
true, starting from scratch, what you did, I think that's a wonderful thing because there's so much more that you can go into. And if you try to do everything at once, it's just overwhelming sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's, I didn't want to bombard them with everything.
right?
So really simple setup here, left everything, in terms of those posts under that general channel. They were still able to get to all the files. So here's a screenshot of all those different files. Basically what I would do after they were presented in the class, because the instructors were still working on, which activities we were going to do and, making updates to the slide decks, sometimes at the very last minute. What I would do is after the class was over, I'd post the lecture materials or the slide deck to that particular files area. Everything was under the general channel, easy to find, right? No having to go through different channels or any of those types of things. Everything was all under the same area. And because there's only, 10, 11 modules, we're talking pretty easy to be able to decipher, what I'm looking for at different times. And the risk questions, the Word document that I have there, that actually came from one of the students who posted in the general channel in one of the posts and said, hey, can we get some additional questions? Because, we all kind of did really kind of poorly on the risk stuff. So can we get some additional questions? And so, sure, not a problem. I posted, a Word document, created the link, and posted right back within that particular channel message that was in that general channel. Really easy for them to find. Either click on, the link, or just go and look for the risk questions in the files. So we were seeing some of that, kind of feedback loop. People were trying to kind of, reach out and work with other people. But that was one of the things that, I noticed right away, is that we really didn't have much engagement to start out with. They were kind of scared of this whole chat thing. They wanted a place to find files, and that was great. They were able to download them, the whole works, but we didn't have those people, interested in really asking other people questions on this open forum. They had never used something like that before. So one of the things that I did is I talked to the class and said, hey, I would like to start something on Teams. You can choose to participate if you want. It does not go against your grade. It's just additional information. So what I started doing is I started doing, just, hey, there's some question of the day, or hey, there's a question that came up in the class, and I would post the answers to it, post more information to it, post some links to where they could go and research it more. And then we started doing this question of the day, where I would just post a question each day, and then basically have 4 different answers, just like you would on the PMP test. So it was just define different questions, and they would talk about their answers and talk about the reasoning behind those answers. And some of the people said that was really great, being able to see the feedback from other people and the reasoning behind it. And I remember that as part of my learning.
Great.
So that was one of the things that we did to kind of help improve some of that engagement early on. Okay.
One of the questions Diana is asking specifically is for people not experienced with Teams, how did you explain what channel is?
I actually didn't explain what channels were, because we only had one channel set up. So I said, everything was under that general channel. So we didn't really need to have any additional channels or any of those different subject areas. But if I were to explain what those different channels are, from a project management standpoint, I look at them as those are my deliverables. All right, those are my main topics. Those are my check gates. Any of that type of stuff is typically in a different channel. And it really depends on not only your organization and the culture of your organization, but more the culture of the team. I look at Teams as a very agile experience, and agile puts the needs of the team over the needs of the process, or the policies kinds of things, and the way that you are working with something. Traditional PMI or PMO is very process driven, so everything has a process, everything has a template. Where you go to more of an agile construct or a scrum type of construct, you're now putting like how the team wants to organize, how they want to work with different things, how they want to define their own processes. So Teams is very adaptable in that regard. So it's really up to the members of the team how they want to self-organize and what they want to use those channels for. The only thing that I would say is don't make like hundreds of channels. It's really overwhelming for any human.
Agree.
I like to say 7 to 10. That works up until a certain extent. And then there are times where it goes a little bit beyond that. But I've also Asif, I'm sure you are in some MVP channels that have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of channels, and I'm like, oh boy, how do we
It is
find
overwhelming.
anything?
Yeah, it's
Yes, it's
overwhelming.
very
Doesn't matter how
overwhelming.
good you are with Teams, it's still overwhelming. It's too much.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of the experiment, you know, uh, favorable results? I'd say yeah. Um, one of the things that I did is I would continually check in with different people in the class and just say, hey, how has your experience been working in teams? And for the most part, people are like, yeah, I can get in, I can get to the stuff. It's been pretty good. One of the last classes that do, we spend some time actually asking the class for feedback and getting their direct feedback, not only on the instructors, what they liked about the class, all of that type of stuff, but this actually gave them an open opportunity to give us some feedback on how they liked working with teams. And I was really surprised because one of the students raised their hands and he said, uh, you know, we at Mayo Clinic, we use SharePoint a lot. And for the most part, we hate it because it's not organized in the right way. We can't find anything. It just, it feels really archaic and it feels like we're working in something from the 1970s. And, I have to laugh a little bit in my heart and yet, cry a little bit as well. But I was open and listened to the feedback and I said, okay, that's good to know. And he said, but this Teams thing, this thing is awesome. Like, can we just replace all of our SharePoint stuff with Teams? And I actually said, well, you do realize there's a SharePoint site behind all of the teams that you're working in, right? And he goes, no. He says, really? That's a SharePoint site? I said, you know where you got all those files? Yeah, that's a SharePoint site. And he's like, no, it's not. And I said, well, let's just back up here just a little bit. And I actually opened it up and I said, you see where it says open in SharePoint right there? This is just a view of a SharePoint library. And he's like, oh, I never noticed that before. That's incredible. And he said, but, can we still replace all of it? And I'm like, that's an IT project that you would have to look into, but it's one of those possibilities that you might want to look into in the future. I don't know if Mayo Clinic has actually gone about deploying Teams yet. I would
Hmm.
assume that they have, in some regard, shape, or form. But for the most part, I gave these people, these students, kind of, a leg up on some of their other coworkers, just simply because they had used Microsoft Teams in the classroom setting already. And then even after the class was done, the class ended actually in the end of May, or actually about the middle of May. And early June, we're still seeing posts, that said, hey, I passed the class. I used these types of things to be able to pass the class. And, we did ask for, hey, let us know if you passed the class, or let us know if you passed the test, or just give us your feedback. What was your experience? And, we can only prep them so much because we haven't necessarily been in a Prometric testing center for a while. And every Prometric testing center runs just a little bit different. I took a test in New York last summer, New York City, just because I happened to be there and I needed to get one of my Microsoft certifications. Very different experience than me going up to the Twin Cities to take the second part of that same certification. Just different cities, different experience. One, I could access a locker, no problem. Throughout my testing, I could get up, go to the bathroom, all of those kinds of things if I needed to. Another one, you were basically like, well, you can get up and go to the bathroom if you need to, but you can't access a locker at all or anything like that. So, just different types of things. And you see some of those from those posts that hey, they were still kind of wanting to reach out to the other students yet, and I thought that was great. So feel pretty good about my first round of doing these types of things, but I'm also one of those people that I want to improve things for the future. I want to retake a look at now what are some of the things that I could do differently next time? what are some of those things that I could, spark the interest of my students in terms of, really working with each other and forming smaller groups with each other and all those types of things. So as we think about the future, and knowing that we now live in 2020 and the world has changed, we have a a virus that has plagued us all. And in Minnesota, at least, we're not sure yet, even though some colleges have basically said, yes, we are going to hold classes. There's, even talk of my city elementary and high school, saying, hey, we can't meet these CDC requirements. Our school, facility just isn't big enough to have students that are, separated so far away from each other, and, isolated classrooms and all of those types of things, because we do a lot with, kind of group learning. And, it's one of the top school districts in the state, and they're basically saying, hey, we got to go remote next year unless the CDC changes the requirements. So one of the things that we are asked to do as the professors of this class is think about remote only learning course and how we could replan that, and what are some of those different things that we could do. And we've been meeting a couple of different times on, what is it that we can do? How does this change? We've got the online modules. Okay, we can still use those. Those still work just fine. If we do a remote only, there's not that dependency on only having students from Mayo Clinic anymore. We could actually expand our network of different individuals, across the country even. And one of the questions that came up again was, all right, so what do we use for technology? Do we use, Zoom? And I was like, no, we use Microsoft Teams. And they're like, really? And I said, yep, we use Microsoft Teams, because I still have that case where anything that I present to those students, I need to have a file location for those students to be able to download. And it just makes sense to be able to do that in Microsoft Teams. But in terms of moving forward and looking at all of the different features that Microsoft Teams offers, I can easily do a Teams meeting. I can do breakout meetings. I can be on video, and we can have other people from that are all remote learners. We can have a bunch of people on video all at the same time, so we can make it a little bit more of that interactive experience. I can record those video sessions, so if somebody just couldn't make one of those meetings, and be able to still take advantage of some of the classroom activities, we can have the recording in stream. We can use OneNote. We can use maybe a whiteboard within Microsoft Teams. We'd have to rethink the innovation games piece. Obviously, they're not going to be able to build paper and tape bridges together in a classroom anymore. So we can redo some of those games that we would typically play, or some of those activities that we would typically do in a traditional classroom, and do those online. It's just a matter of rethinking them and reorganizing them so that they can be done in an online fashion. And then some of the things that I would probably want to do next is I would have channels for maybe, each of those 12 different topics that relate to the PMBOK guide. Maybe have, one channel for just a whole bunch of questions, question of the day, all of those types of things, and show them how to use the different channels now. And then, a channel for people to post on different resources, maybe different downloadable exams that they use, that they find online, maybe different websites that have different questions, you know, all of those kinds of things. 'Cause there's a lot of that information that's out there. And I know people have even come to class with, you know, an app that gives them, you know, 200 questions that they can, you know, sit while they're, you know, waiting for their oil to be changed on their car and just go through a few questions. So those kinds of resources for those different students to be able to use. And then constantly wanting to improve engagement, especially with everybody being remote. How do you improve that engagement? How do you know, allow the students to really ask each other's questions, and get answers from each other and learn from each other and engage with each other on, you know, not only a classroom level, but maybe it extends into their work, kinds of things as well. So I'm always constantly looking for ways to improve engagement, with working with, you know, classroom of students. You know, it's one of those things where it's one of it, something that Asif and I were talking, before the session even, is, you know, hey, I don't have an audience in front of me. I love it when there's an audience in front of me and I can, you know, look in their eyes and, you know, walk around and really engage with them. You know, it's one of those things that I am definitely missing right now in terms of, you know, just having that human connection.
Yep.
And so finding those ways to improve that engagement overall. Is there a question?
No, I would just agree with you. This
Yeah.
makes complete sense.
Yeah. So I did have a little bit of an inspiring video message. I know we were talking, the the audio is not going to work right, with this particular webinar. It is in the slide deck, but you know, this whole case study and my thinking about it was, before I was introduced to somebody called, Dr. David Kellerman. And Dr. Kellerman is at the University of New South Wales in Australia. He has spoken at Microsoft Inspire back in 2019. And I was introduced to kind of his work, in the classroom. He uses Microsoft Teams in a classroom of about 500 engineers, engineering students, and has done amazing work in engaging students, to help each other out, to help their, you know, have direct feedback from their instructors, all of that type of stuff, and literally can do it on the go, in between classrooms, you know, on his phone, all of that type of stuff, and still maintain that connection to all of those different students. It is a really, really inspiring message, to be able to see that and how they're using that. If you are interested, this is just a YouTube video that was posted, from Microsoft, and it's, you know, just do a search for Dr. David Kellerman or Dr. Kellerman using Microsoft Teams, and you'll be able to find this particular video. Otherwise, it will be in the slide deck and you can get the link to the particular video from there. Wonderful, wonderful stuff in terms of what he's doing with Microsoft Teams and just transforming the classroom. They really look at it as that communications platform and extending those communications not only, you know, from the classroom, but outside of that as well. So it's really, really inspiring. So with that, any questions that anybody has?
Yeah, there was one that came a couple of minutes ago from, there's actually a couple of different ones. One from Robert asking, is there a specific reason for not choosing the classroom template and work with assignments?
Yes, actually. I did not work with assignments in the particular instance that I did. For one thing, all of the assignments were, you know, they're pretty much put into a Word document and handed out to all the students at the beginning of the semester. Um, I look at the assignments as, maybe that would be for a different classroom type. We didn't actually have like, okay, you're assigned and you have to turn in your assignments, all of those types of things. Because it's adult education, it's mostly based on their their assignment is to go into the LMS and take a test that is post that week's worth of content. So, beginning of the week, maybe Monday or Tuesday, Sunday, Monday type of things, you would do the online portion, do some readings, come to class on like a Wednesday or Thursday, whatever night we had the class, do the classroom activities, get some additional questions. By say Thursday or Friday, you would take one of those online exams that cover that coursework and then go to your next module. And that was kind of the cadence that we did. So, the students knew how to get their grades in, how to get their assignments in. Not really assignments. It was mostly just a test in order to pass that particular online module. And that's how we did a lot of the grading, as well as the people coming into the classroom, participating in the classroom, doing the classroom activities, those types of things. So we didn't have the need to use assignments. And again, I didn't want to use anything but the most simple features in Microsoft Teams, even though we had the assignments available as part of our, education package or education SKU. We just simply didn't use the assignments or use any of those features. So just kept it simple.
Simple is big. Simple
Yeah,
is very important, just like you said, KISS. We all have to remember that. Although,
KISS method.
if I, yeah, although the acronym means something a little bit different for me for the last S, but that's what we could talk about
I
later.
think most people do, but we don't want to call anybody that. That's, kind of
It is more
just,
like shocking, like, oh, you know what, yeah. Anyway, we'll go that route. Here's a comment from Diana, which I really like. I'm going to read that out to you. The
yeah,
difference between SharePoint and Microsoft Teams. The way that SharePoint is implemented, it feels static versus Teams are flexible, adaptable, and because of this, it's engaging and inviting to take action by the users. It is
yeah,
true. It's a lot more fluent.
yes,
People usually get into it just for chat functionality. Let's chat, and then of course, let's meet, and what else can you do? And then you start getting in more and more. It just seems like something that's engaging with you, and it's much more lively, much more alive for
yeah,
what you're doing things. So I agree.
yeah. I would agree too, yes. And I think it's very representative of the transformation that we're going through in our workplaces as well.
Yeah.
That, hey, we're looking to chat with people again, and working from home. And my husband's an engineer for Bosch, and he's like, how do you do this work from home stuff? I mean, this was after 1 week of him working from home, and he's like,
Yeah.
wow. I had no idea. I said, yeah, it's very isolating, isn't it? He said, oh my God, I cannot believe how isolating it
Yeah.
is. And so he's learned to adapt, and, he's done some of the same things. He's like, yeah, I had to set up a meeting, once a week with some work friends just to talk
Yep.
because I miss talking to them, and so that's all part of just, how transformative our businesses have been in just even the last few months.
And Teams help with all of that. So that's wonderful. It's a
Yes,
great component of that. Here's a
absolutely.
question from Kamal. Hey, Kamal, I know you. Hi. Good to see you. From what I'm aware of, breakout sessions aren't available in Teams. How do you do this?
So they are going to be coming. They are on the roadmap. I believe by the end of this month, in fact, they will be having breakout sessions available. So look for your different rings and look for that type of information. But easy way to do it is just set up additional Teams meetings. And then you can actually go in and kind of pause one meeting that you're on with a bigger group and then go into another meeting and do your meeting chat, and you can have those 2 meetings kind of running all at the same time, and go back and forth between the 2 of them. Really easy way to do breakout if you don't have the breakout capabilities yet. So not a problem. I've done it even with some of the groups of people that I work with, and it's worked seamlessly to be on 2 different meetings at the same time.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Glad to hear it's coming soon too. We'll hold
yes,
you
it
to
is.
that. Uh,
Take a look at your ring.
here's a awesome comment by Lisa Joe. She put out there the KISS acronym. She says that I use it. I refer to it as keep it simple and sensible. I
Oh,
like
I
that.
like
It's
that
pretty cool.
too.
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
very
I do
nice.
like
Thanks for
that.
sharing
Yeah,
that.
yes.
And there's no other questions here, but any last thoughts from you, Liz?
No, in terms of starting points for anything with Teams, make sure that you keep it simple. I think that's really kind of your driver, and you can always add to it, because it is so adaptable and so flexible, that you can add to it going forward, and just make use out of technology to enhance your
Yeah,
whatever use case that you're working with.
I'll add the exact same thing that, I used to be one of those guys who used to read manuals back and from beginning to the
Yes.
end when I would get something
Yeah.
else. But as I grew older, it just doesn't make sense. And especially for people right now, kids these days, and also millennials, and even adults like us right now have a very short attention span. You just got to get your work done. So
Yeah.
if you talk their language and talk in terms of benefits, here's one thing that you can do for this huge benefit. Boom, you got it made. You got them on your
Yeah.
side. And
Yep.
then from there, grow the other 20, 30% of or more of features that you want to get them into. But start with one big pain point and just solve
Yeah.
that with one simple thing. KISS is an acronym to remember for everything, not just Teams, I think for everything. That's how you get people on your side and using what you know that they can benefit from.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you very much for having me. It was great presenting to everyone today. Great audience, all of that type of stuff. Great questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. Folks, thanks for coming today. Let us know if there's any feedback. We always look at the feedback and get better after the fact. So until next time, have a great day. Take care.